What's up, baby? And welcome to MMA Junkie Legends and Legends, Rolling with Burt Watson. Today, I'm sitting with a young man who has amassed one of the greatest resumes in the history of MMA.
Georges St-Pierre,
one of the most diverse fighters in the history of this sport.
George, him up, throws him down. We got ourselves a fight, ladies and gentlemen. He is the all-time best in UFC history.
He grew up in Quebec, Canada. He went to school in Canada. He got bullied in school. He got pushed around. He got shoved. So he decided to take up karate to kind of level the playing field a little bit. This young man actually got down on his knees and begged the UFC to give him a title shot.
I want the belt so bad. Give it to me.
3 titles in 2 different weight classes. And the rest is history. Some people call him the GOAT. Some call him GSP. He says, just call me George. I'm going to respect the man and call him Georges St-Pierre.
Time to go to work. Come on, back.
We rollin'!
Yeah! All night long, baby.
Thanks for the introduction.
What's up, baby?
How are you? Good. I'm doing well. I hope everything is good on your side of the world as well.
Oh yeah, much better now. Welcome. Thanks for joining me on Legends and Legends. You know, we've known each other for quite some time, and we've had quite a few conversations, some personal, but for the most part, event related. On this platform, we get to sit and just chat, just kind of OG chatter. I'm going to ask you questions, and I hope you ask me questions. But whatever you want, no questions off limit. You can ask me whatever. But before we get started, baby, let's talk about that career. What a career you've had, baby. 28 pro fights. You started your MMA pro career in 2002 at the age of 20. You made your UFC debut in 2004. You've had 15 title fights, 9 defenses, and the second most title wins in UFC history with 13. You had the most takedowns in UFC history with 90. You were one of 5 fighters that won a belt in 2 different divisions. You're a former 2-time welterweight champion, former middleweight champion, UFC Hall of Famer in 2020, and the Canadian Athlete of the Year in 2008, 2009, and 2010. That is one hell of a ride, baby.
Yeah, it's a lot of good memories, and when I think about it, it's fun. It's fun to think about it, but I would not want to do this again. It's a lot of emotion.
Well, you know, just give us a little bit of 411, a little background about how you started your career. You know, I know you started at 7.
Yeah, I started doing karate. The first reason why I've started, it's because I started to learn a self-defense. I was bullied in school, and I had to learn how to defend myself. And growing up, I was a kid that lacked a lot of confidence, and I believe that's why I was picked on. Like in nature, predatory animal, they always hunt the weakest in the group, and I was one of this guy. I did have good self-confidence, and the way I used to carry myself was much different than it is now. I used to walk, look down, shrug my shoulder. It shows in my demeanor. And I think that's the main reason why I was getting picked on. And martial art taught me, of course, self-defense, but it also taught me, it teach me confidence. It teach me that confidence is a choice. It's not necessarily a state of mind. And by transforming myself because I wanted to transform my environment, what I didn't realize at the time is if you want to change your environment, first you need to look at yourself in the mirror and change yourself from the inside out. And that's
Right.
how I did. I changed the way I was carrying myself. When I shook someone's hand, I was looking at him in the eyes. When I talk to someone, I look at him in the eyes, and I didn't shrug my shoulder and look down anymore. I was like walking straight and with some kinds of confidence. You know, in the beginning it's hard because I was like acting, but after a certain time it shows, and that's what mainly took care of the problem of bullying for me when I was young.
So as a child, you actually started when you were 7 years old because you got bullied. And
Yeah,
then
I started at 7, but it's my dad that taught me in the beginning. But then after I went in a school, I started at 7, but not really seriously. It's like once in, like sometimes my dad used to teach me, but my dad was working a lot, Bert. He was working like more than like 60 hour a week. You know, it was crazy because we didn't have a lot of money. And we were 3 kids at home. And then after around at 9 year old, he put me in a school, and that's when I needed to use it as a self-defense, because around 9-10 years old I was having a lot of problem at school.
so you had 3 kids in your family. Was it a brother and a sister, or you had 2 sisters? Or
I have 2 sisters younger than me. I'm the older one in the family. And
so
I grew up in a place. It's like a countryside. It's 3,000 people who live there. I didn't not grow up in the city. I grew up in a farm, and that's the environment I was in.
So you're actually a farm boy. So
Yeah.
was your dad involved in martial arts, or did he just because you got bullied and decided that's what you wanted to do, then he brought you in?
My dad was a black belt in Kyokushin karate, but because he was working so much, you know, he was very busy with work. He and had problems at school. And I wanted to learn martial art. I was inspired by Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and those guys. So when I started karate at first, I really liked it because I had problems at school. I had also problems at home. You know, back in the day, it was very, very tough. And my dad is one of my biggest inspiration, because my dad, he had an addiction of alcohol. You know, he used to drink a lot, but he when I was a younger teenager, he stopped, and he made a big sacrifice, because I know it's not easy to get out of it. And he stopped drinking. And for me, it always been a very good inspiration, because a lot of people, they can't do that. It takes a lot of mental strength. So he put me in and I needed discipline, because I had a lot of anger inside of me. I could have gone the wrong way and choose a wrong path of life if martial art really saved me in a way. So I was a little bit of a rebel. You know, I didn't like to follow the rules. He cut me at a very young age. So he decided to send me to a Kyokushin karate school where they can teach me discipline and mold me better to the system, so to speak. So that's how my journey started. I remember I was at a friend's house, and they ran a tape of what it was called UFC at the time. I didn't know what it was, but it was a tournament like of different martial art competing against each other.
Right.
And I saw Royce Gracie winning the tournament. And because I saw Royce Gracie taking on bigger guys that were most of the time bigger than him and look way more intimidated than him, it really inspired me, because it made me remember of the bully that I was facing when I was younger. And I never really had a chance to defend myself against those bullies, because they were younger than they were older than me at the time, and they were stronger, and they were always 2-3 on me. But so by seeing what Royce Gracie winning the tournament against guys that look like bully, it really inspired me, and right away I knew that's what I wanted to do for a living. You know, like it was like unbelievable. And at the time, it's like I not a revelation, but I knew right away that the sport was going one day to be big, and I right away believe in it. Because it's something very pure, like basketball, hockey, football, it's a sport,
Right.
It's not made for everybody, but fighting, even if you're the nicest guy in the world, I can put you in a situation that you will be forced to fight, either to defend yourself or defend the people that you love. So fighting, everybody can relate to fighting, in some ways. Some people are better than others at it. So for that reason, I knew it was going to be a very popular sport one day, and right away people thought I was crazy, because that's when I decided to orient my whole life towards that goal.
Well, now you started in karate, and Royce putting the stamp on it, but transitioning a little further, because your head trainer Firas Zahabi, John Chamberlain, Phil Nurse, and Freddie Roach, that's a transition from karate to mixed martial arts. When did that come about? Because that's a big difference.
Yeah, of course. So I was only a karate guy, when I was around 16, 15 years old. And they had what they call Extreme Fighting Championship. But at the time, it was illegal. It wasn't the Native American reserve. It wasn't in the reserve. So they did it there because it was legal there. But they were not allowed to do it on the mainland. And I live, the town where I come from, Saint-Isidore, it's 5 minutes away from Kanawagi and Native Reserve. So I was underage to go there, but I always wanted to see it. So I secretly found a way to get there and watch the show live when I was young. I was about 15, 16 years old. And one guy that was the champion was a guy from France. His name was Christophe Midou. And he won the heavyweight title there, and at that time I remember all the newspaper were talking about it. It was like a very barbaric sport. The government was against it, but they still hold the event, and it was a big controversy around it. So my parents did not even know that I was there that night, because my parents always want me to be at school, and I was at school, but I was studying at school mostly because of them, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I know it's important to stay educated, but I didn't know what to do. I was lost at the time, and fighting at the time was not really a good way to make a living, but it was more a passion. So Christophe Midou won the title, and a few weeks later, how that happened, it's a really like a movie scenario. I meet him randomly in the street. I'm driving my car, and I saw him in the street. On Saint Laurent Street. It's a street in Montreal where there was a lot of store. I stopped my car in the middle of the street, people going crazy. I get out of my car, I go see Christophe, the champion of Extreme Fighting Championship, and I go tell him, I say, Mr. Midou, I was speaking French to him. I said, hey, I'm a huge fan of yours. I come from Kyokushin karate background as well. I want to start competing in mixed martial art. I'm wondering, do you know any place where I could go, or what could I do? I will do anything as I can to improve and to get better and to compete pro one day. And I'm about 16 years old. I just have my driving license, So he's like, to my biggest surprise, he's like, okay, you really want to train? Come tomorrow at this place at that time. He give me an address and a time. I show up the next day, and that's how I start my mixed martial art training. And then from there, he was and his career, he didn't go far as a professional fighter, because unfortunately for him, he fought in UFC, but he had a lot of injuries and a lot of problems outside of martial art. But he was an incredibly good mentor for me in the beginning. Stuff that he teach me goes beyond techniques. He teach me a lot of confidence and mental game that it allowed me to have a very strong base, a strong foundation to start my career. And that's how I start training with Christophe Midou. And he became my first mentor. And then after him, because he always wanted me to cross-train. He says to me, listen, I can teach you certain stuff, but you need to get other other knowledge from different guys that you can to get stronger. You need to learn boxing with the best coach of boxing, jiu-jitsu, and that's how I went to New York to learn jiu-jitsu at Renzo Gracie Academy. I didn't speak English at the time, but he forced me. He said, you need to drive there and learn it. Because back in the day, there's no way you can learn on the internet. You had to go physically to learn the technique. So I went to New York. I went to TriStar, and that's how I started developing all these connections in the world of mixed martial art because of Christophe told me that's the way it should be done in order to improve.
Well, you transitioned and you did a lot of training. You trained in New York. You trained in Canada. You trained in Mexico, working with Gracie and then Jackson Wink. What was that development like for you?
Yeah, I think for my confidence, it was very good because I remember when I was young and I used to see a lot of the guys fighting on TV. Like, because TV makes it bigger than it is, you know, you think they're on TV, they're better than you. So Christophe, what he brings to the table what he brought to the table for me, he made me train with some guys like on the local scene that I used to see on TV. And then I realized that, man, I can hang with these guys, you know, I can hang there. So that's possible because everybody told me I was crazy before. I was, I'm out of my mind. These guys are special. You're from nowhere. You're never gonna get there because nobody could say that. I was an athletic kid, but nobody could tell me that I had the potential to become champion one day. So I did all the sacrifice. I went to New Mexico, trained with Rashad, Nate Marquardt, to New York under John Danaher. Then Firas at the time was mostly a training partner of mine. And Firas at the time, he only spoke English. And I only spoke French at the time. So we were training with each other, but we couldn't really communicate with each other. That was crazy. So later down, he learned French and I learned English. And now we Firas always been the most very intellectual. You know, he always was the guy in the gym that when we seek technical advice, we went to see Firas in Montreal. And he was very good at fighting. He could have been great at fighting if he wanted to. But I feel that Firas felt that he could be better as a teacher. You know, he could have fought if he wanted to. People have no idea how good Firas is. Especially when now he's older, but when he was younger, man, I'm telling you, he was UFC elite level. He was unbelievable, and he was good everywhere. Firas was unbelievable. If he would want to fight, he could have fought. But fighting sometimes not made for everyone. And I think Firas chose the path of teaching because he felt he had something that a lot of guys did not have, like the intellect that comes with it. He's very good at teaching. Right. And I think that one of the best moves of my career is to go with Firas. Made Firas become my training partner, but also from my training partner becoming my coach.
Well, you always seem pretty grounded, and you had a lot of big names in your camp, and a lot of talented people that you trained with. You made your UFC debut in 2004 in UFC 46, your first fight.
Now it is time for the welterweights. Georges St-Pierre makes his UFC debut against the Heat. Karl Parisian, the Armenian with a bad attitude.
Third fight in the UFC, they put you in with Matt Hughes.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Man,
third fight.
It was a nightmare for me. I used to, like, people they don't remember, like people sometimes don't remember, you know, how scary was Matt Hughes. He used to grab guys and throw them in their head. He was like a scary guy to fight. Like he had like some crazy highlight reels. He slammed like in Canada, one of the pioneer of martial art in Canada was Carlos Newton. He was the first champion in UFC. Like, he was like, for most martial art people at the time, he was like a god. And Matt Hughes grabbed Carlos Newton from a triangle choke, stood up with him, and slammed him and knocked him out. like one of the most brutal knocked in UFC history. And in my third fight, I had to fight Hughes. And when Dana White told me I was fighting for the title, I thought it was a joke because I did not believe in it. And to tell you frankly, I did not want that fight. I was scared to death. I didn't want to fight him. I knew I wasn't ready.
For the welterweight championship, scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds, here from Atlantic City, New Jersey, it is Matt Hughes against Georges St-Pierre. The winner will leave with a belt around his waist.
Well, I fought him. I hang there a little bit until I got cut with an armbar.
This is where Matt is at his best, though, the ground and pound.
And St-Pierre's guard is very good. He just avoided a big-time elbow. He was able to push to the outside and cross over. So far, again, he doesn't seem like he's being tired out by being on the bottom.
Well, we saw that straight punch glance off of Matt Hughes' chin. And Matt trying to finish this round 1 with a flurry and score some points. Matt Hughes like a submission, and it's all over! It's all over! Matt Hughes with a submission victory! Bang! Armbar over! Matt Hughes is once again the welterweight champion!
But then after I watched the fight, I realized that, man, it was just mental. My problem was just mental because I went there to fight him, not to win. I went there to not lose. And I realized that after that fight, I said, you know what? I can be there with the best guy in the world. I can beat anybody. So that's why there's a big discrepancy in terms of, I believe, in terms of my performance in my first fight with him and my second and third fight. Not that physically I was that much better, but mentally I was a different person. You know, I had more confidence. And confidence for a fighter, Burt, I think it's very important. And you know that you can have all the skill and talent in the world, but if you don't have confidence, it's a little bit like someone who has a lot of money in his bank account, but no way of accessing it. So I was very skilled. I had a lot of talent, but I didn't have the confidence when I first fought Matt Hughes. You know, I was beaten even before the fight.
I know that at one point you even said that your loss to Matt Hughes had a little bit of the fact that you were in awe of Matt Hughes, that you fought him. So that kind of threw you off a little bit. But they gave you no easy fights. You went from Matt Hughes, you fought Matt Serra, Jason Miller, Sean Shirk. I don't ever remember you having an easy fight. And when you fought Matt Serra, he was 11-1 underdog.
Yeah.
You know, what was that experience?
Oh, man. Before every fight, Burt, I'm scared to death. I never slept well. Because I run all the scenario possible in my mind that if he does that, I'm gonna do this to make sure I'm all prepared, and it's like an obsession. Before my first fight with Matt Serra, I don't know why it was a false feeling of confidence, overconfidence. Perhaps because I saw him in the Ultimate Fighter, and he was also a very nice guy. And the odds, you know, everybody, I just became champion at the time. Everybody told me I was the best and the best. I was like the new kids on the block, you know, like feeling like I was unbeatable. So the only fight I slept well the night before, it was my first fight with Matt Serra. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I felt pretty damn good until you showed up in the locker room, kick out the door and say,
Time to roll, baby, roll, yeah!
GSP, you're up next. Are you ready? Rolling boat. And when you said, are you ready? It hit me. I was like, shit. Maybe I'm not ready. Because I felt that I didn't do the same sacrifice that I did normally in my other fights. I didn't feel like I was scared enough, because normally when I train in the fear that my opponent trained harder than me.
Right.
And I go to a lot of mental struggle to overcome that fear and adversity. But I didn't feel like when I fought Matt Serra, I went through that. I took it too lightly, kind of, especially mentally. It was not a threat for me. But when you kick out the door and you ask me, "Are you ready?" Now I became I was face to face with reality. And if you look at that fight, when my walk in the octagon, it shows, because it shows like I'm going to a funeral.
Wow.
And I don't know what it is. It's like, sometimes things in life does like a 180-degree turn, and that's what happened for me. I don't know what happened. I mean, then the fight started with Matt Serra, and Matt Serra is mostly a jiu-jitsu guy, so I was expecting him. My whole strategy was based on the fact that he's gonna try to shoot and put me down, and I'm gonna keep the fight standing up. But he sometime early in the fight, he dug down and threw an overhand. He cut me right behind the ear, and I become wobbly. And now I'm thinking, I'm like, man, this guy is the 11-1 on the dog. No way he's gonna. I became enraged. I became kind of enraged. Now I'm thinking, I'm gonna give it back to him right away. And I lost my equilibrium. I'm stunned, which is not a good idea in a fight when you get
not a good one.
Back up and recompose. So my emotion take over, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna freaking give it to him right away, because I'm mad, and I realize that everybody watching me, and I'm supposed to beat this guy easy. Like, what the hell is going on? And I'm going to give it back to him, and man, now it rains punches on me, like boom, boom, boom. And Matt Serra was a lot better than I thought he was. And he came that night, he beat me because he was a better fighter. He fought a much better fight than me. He was the best fighter that night.
So it wasn't my fault. You're not putting that one on me, right?
I blame you, Burt. Because of kicking the door and asking me the question, "Are you ready?" No. But then after that, is a lot of people blame me because I tapped. And I'm going to tell you something about people who are listening. In boxing, when a guy cannot intelligently defend himself, the referee stop and nobody says anything. They always say it's a good call. Why in MMA when someone tap after a strike? Because I knew I couldn't defend myself intelligently. I was lost. Like I tapped because I didn't want to have unnecessary brain damage done to me in order to be able to come back the best I can be. Because if I would not tap and be knocked out cold, perhaps I would never be the Georges St-Pierre. I never had the career that I had, because maybe I would have brain damage that would not allow me to have that improvement. So there's no shame to it. When you're beaten, you're beaten. You people like they were blaming me, Burt. Oh, he should get out on his shield. He top on strike, but I think it's a stupid thing. We're not in a war. Like we cannot compare the mindset. We go into a fight. It's like a war, but it's not the outcome is not the same thing. It's not the same reality, and it's a sport. You know what I mean? When you're beaten, you're beaten. There's no shame to accept it. You know what I mean? And that's how I felt that day, and it put a lot of pressure on me after, because it affected my confidence. People like, oh, George is finished now. He tap, he tap on strike. He's done. He's broken. Like a dog. He's broken. He's never gonna come back. So I had a lot of anger. So that's why I had a run of a lot of wins after, and I was very hungry because I felt like I needed to prove them wrong. Yeah, after my fight with Matt Serra, I realized that it's good to be afraid, because sometimes I didn't know what to think of it. I was afraid, but I was like, man, maybe I was asking myself the question. I was like, maybe I'm not made for this life, because I don't like to fight. I like to win. I like, I was just very gifted. I made a lot of money with it. I like the freedom. I like the girls, the access of things that you didn't have. I like this whole thing, but I don't like to fight, Burt. If I could every time click my fingers and make the fight go in a way that before the fight I click my finger, now the fight is over, I would have done it every time and never enjoy 1 second of the fight. Except when you win, it's unbelievable. But the uncertainty of not knowing if you're going to get knocked out and humiliated or badly hurt or winning, it's unbearable for me. So after Matt Serra, I realized that being afraid, it's a good thing. Because I avenged my loss against Matt Serra after, and I beat him. And every single fight after that one, I was afraid. And I knew that if I wasn't afraid, it was a big problem. So I learned how to deal with fear. I knew that fear was a good thing because I realized even though it's extremely uncomfortable because it drives me nuts, it makes me perform better. I believe being afraid makes my reaction time better, make me more aware, more focused, and perform better athletically, more explosive, you know, because it's like I'm afraid, I'm fighting for my survival, so my muscle can fire faster. And now it's a good thing. But man, after a while, it takes a hell of a toll on your body. And that's what takes, like, of course, I get hit on the head, and like everybody else, I'm a fighter. I had some injuries, but physically, I feel fine 100% physically. What I think fighting took more out of me, it's more the emotion, the fear, and that's the reason why I stopped. You know, because I believe that when you fight, it's okay to be afraid, and I only focus on the objective. Myself, I do not exist. When I go to a fight, I only focus on what I need to do in order to win. And these things need to be done 100% no matter what is the cost. That's how is my mindset when I go into fight.
You said that you actually didn't like fighting. You know, it was unbearable. You know, and do you ever miss that rush, or have you lost that rush?
No, I never liked to fight, Burt. People don't. It's hard to explain. I like to win. I guess I like to win better than I hate to lose. I like to, in order to have the freedom, to have the money, the lifestyle that I have, I needed to fight. That was the sacrifice, the price to pay in order to have that dream lifestyle that I'm living. There's no perfect work. Every job has something that you don't like. There's no perfect jobs, you know. And in my world, I used to fight maybe 2 to 3 times a year. Those days that I'm fighting are the worst day of my life.
Did you make enough money?
I make a lot of money. I have security now. I'm safe, you know. But in order to have that, I needed to fight, and that's the reason why I fight. People sometimes, when I talk to other fighters, they're like, "Oh, why you're fighting?" "Oh, I love to fight." I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm thinking that's why when I was young, I saw many sports psychologists because I thought, I was like, I don't think I'm made for this. I see guys when I corner guys, some of them they're happy, they're in the locker room, they're all happy, and I'm thinking, I'm like, man, me, I'm pretending to be happy because I'm trying to fake it until I make it. But it's a freaking lie. I'm not comfortable. I don't like that feeling of uncertainty. I never like it. It's unbearable. It's not fun. You feel so uncomfortable. And I'm scared, and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm afraid. But I had to go through that if I want to keep my living. You know?
Did you make most of your money during the time you were fighting? Is that when you made most of your money?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like with the pay-per-views and most of my money, I did it with fighting. Now I make still a lot of money because I have, you know, because of who I am and the legacy that I have. I can live off this, but I guess sometimes people ask me, why did you come back if you don't like to fight? It's because I guess I like the training. I like the brainstorming, the you know, when you're the science of fighting. I like to win better than I hate to lose. But so when you win a fight, you cannot describe how you feel. It's just amazing. It's a relief of fear, a relief of fear, a relief of pressure. It feels so good. But in order to have that feeling you need to go through hell. And when I say hell, I'm not talking only about physically, about mentally, you need to go through hell. For me, that was more a mental struggle, and it was very hard to deal with. And the main reason why I stopped is it's because it's I don't need to fight anymore. I didn't need to fight Bisping either, or even Hendricks or Nick Diaz. But when you fight, you have expectation, you have dream, and you carry a lot of people with you. You know what I mean? A lot of people live off you. They make a lot of money when you fight.
Make a lot of money. You mentioned Johny Hendricks, and after that fight with Johny Hendricks, you vacated the title and retired or not retired. What was that after the Hendricks fight and you vacating the title and staying gone for 3 or 4 years?
I was struggling with UFC. I had a lot of issues with UFC because of performance enhancing drugs. It was we were talking behind closed door, and I know they know that a lot of their athletes were using performance enhancing drug, but I'm not stupid. I know how business works. They didn't want to test them because they know that a lot of their champion would fall. And I was just I think I carry too much pressure for too long. I was champion for a long time, and it's hard to become champion, but it's even harder to stay champion because you have a lot of pressure on yourself. And I think I just needed vacation, and I was in some kind of depression at the time, and I was ashamed to admit it because I know people. I had a dream life. I have a lot of money. I'm healthy. And I was ashamed to admit that I was going through a depression because I didn't know how people would think about me. They would be like, oh, what he has to complain for? He's champion of the world. He's rich. What the hell he's complaining for? So I was ashamed, but I was going through mental depression. And on top of that, I was fighting UFC against a performance enhancing drug. And I had a lot of personal issues. And I just needed a break. And I think I should have retired after Nick Diaz fight. I should have taken a break. If I would have done that, perhaps I would have come back earlier in my career, but I did not because I felt the need to always fight the next guy because there is always a next guy. And that's how I realized it. As soon as you finish a fight, there's a next one and the next one because the sport of mixed martial art is promote about what's next. It's not promoted about what happened in the past. It's what's next. Sell. We need to sell the next one. Build up who's the next big thing that can beat the champion. Oh, now this guy is beat. Who's next? And that.
Now, were they questioning you? Was the UFC questioning you about performance enhancing, or was there a question about it?
Before, right after before they didn't really want to talk to me because I know I was trying, on top of the mental struggle I was going in, I was at mental and emotional struggle. I had to deal. I had a shitty training camp. I was tired, mentally burned out. So I was training for the fight, and I was trying to make it in a way that, because on the interview I was telling Johny Hendricks, okay, let's make a drug testing for that fight, and he agreed in the beginning. But then after he said no. He said no. After you look at the history, that's how it happened. He didn't want to do it. And I've learned also that UFC tell him to not do it, to not doing it, because they didn't want to start a trend that people start doing it. Because I know there's a lot of good fighters that are honest, that don't cheat. And it would have made a lot of guys that are honest who think that their opponent might be cheating to do the same trend. And they didn't want that to start, so they told Johny Hendricks to not do it because I wanted to do with Vada at the time. So after the fight with Johny Hendricks, right after the press conference, I went in a room with Lorenzo and Dana, and I told them what I think of this whole thing. And a lot of this stuff have been said were stuff that stayed behind closed door because I don't want to accuse nobody, but I was telling I put my heart on I tell them the truth about what I think about this thing, and I thought it was corrupted, and I left. And to my biggest, I was very surprised because UFC, they took a risk. You know, I always thought that if they would implement drug testing, yeah, of course, in the beginning it would clean up the sport because a lot of their champion would fall, and that's what happened. But I believe that at the long term, it will make UFC look good. It will bring the sport to a next level.
To the next
level.
I'm
very happy that the UFC took the initiative to start doing drug testing. In the beginning, it was tough because it was a lot of controversy, and they probably lost tons of money for main event being canceled, and a lot of their stars, champion, fell because of it. Because everybody knew it, but nobody says anything, and I was just tired of that BS, you know?
That BS. After Johny Hendricks, you were gone for almost 4 years. You came back to fight Michael Bisping at a higher weight. What brought you back?
Yeah, so I see that they were implementing drug testing now. That's one thing that brought me back. I would not have come back if this would not have been done. That's one thing that made me come back. And at the time, I defended my belt many times, and I was starting to train again and feeling good, and I took care of a lot of my personal stuff that happened in my life, and I was feeling very good, and I was in that gym, and I still get it. You know, when I was training with the guys, people were like, "Hey, George, tell me the truth. You're preparing a comeback." I was like, "No, I'm just training for fun." And then I had a talk with John Denara. John Denara says to me, said, "George, if you come back, you know, why would you come back and do the same thing all over again? It's always fun to do new challenges. New challenge." I'm like, "Yeah." I say, "Why don't you go up?" And one of your major critics is that you never went up to fight at heavier weight class. You know, if you go back down at 170, you'll do the same thing again. Why don't you go up and fight the champion at 185? I'm like, yeah, it's a good idea. And at the time, I think it was Luke Rockhold. Because when I trained with John, he's from New York. I didn't want to do this against Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman is part of the same team at Renzo Gracie. I would never fight a guy part of the same team for the respect. I would never challenge a guy from my same team. That's how I am. People say it's a sport, it's okay, but you don't play basketball. You play basketball, you play hockey, you don't play fighting. So for that reason, me, it's my mentality. I don't do that. If a guy is champion, is from my team, I don't challenge him. It's part of my mentality. I remember one night Michael Bisping won the title, and we were training to get bigger and try to orient my comeback towards that. And Michael Bisping won the fight, and Bisping he's the kind of guy that can also, not only that he's the champion at 185, but he's a big trash talker. You know what I mean? And one of my
which you were not. You were never a trash talker.
Yeah, so one of the main critic is I never fought a guy like in a heavier weight class, but also I was too much cerebral. There were not enough emotion going into my fight because I'm not a trash talker. And Michael Bisping is a hell of a good trash talker.
Yeah, you just said it, one of the best, simple as that. I've beaten all the greats. I'm going to beat this guy. George is one of the greats. I'm going to wipe him out. Saturday night, I'm going to destroy him. Wipe him out, wipe the floor, boo this motherfucker. This is how stupid you look with those fucking headbands. You look like a fucking idiot. Hey, George, these are your people. These are your fucking people, man. What the George, this ain't going the distance, pal. Look at that look at his face, like he's got a secret, like he knows. You don't know pal. You don't know
And he's also a big, he's openly went many times talking about performance enhancing drug, which I'm against it as well. So when he won the title, it was a perfect timing at the time that I was preparing to come back. But the way he did it was so inspirational. Like, took the fight on a short notice. It was just amazing. And Michael Bisping is a hell of a fighter. You know what I mean? He's a hell of a fighter, a hell of a striker. And he's probably the toughest guy in the UFC history in terms of toughness. It's unbelievable. If you know what the guys have been through, it's just insane.
Well, you're pretty tough yourself. Now, I could do this all day, and I've got a little time left, so there's a couple of questions I want to try to get to before I have to let you go there, baby. Let's address the elephant in the room with the GOAT in the room, okay? We got two elephants in this room, Usman and Khabib. Give us your thoughts on those two guys.
Khabib, after my fight with Bisping, I retired, took some time off, healed. I had a condition called ulcerative. I took care of all the symptoms. So we wanted to organize a fight because for me it was worth it to fight Khabib because he was undefeated. He's probably has the most dominated career of all time. You know, and I don't even know if he lost a round. So we were talking about it to the UFC, and I know Khabib wanted that fight. I wanted that fight, but UFC had other plans, so it did not materialize. Usman, on the other hand, you know, like he's an amazing fighter, and he's building up his legacy. But for me, the risk is not worth it because sometimes to do the most exciting thing to do for a fighter is sometimes the scariest thing. And Khabib, because in terms of legacy, was the guy to beat. You know, for me, was the only guy that I could have come back, but not for other guys. Because I know if I beat Usman, after he's gonna be another guy coming back calling me out, Kobe Covington or Jorge Masvidal. You know what I mean? It never ends.
Yes.
Never ends. You think it will end, but it never ends. And I don't want to go back into that things. I don't want to be champion. I would have done it for a novelty fight, for a big fight, something special that never been done. But I'm not. I don't want to go back into that media circle of defending my belt over and over again.
There's an absolute reason why everybody keeps calling you out, baby. They're not just calling you out for no specified reason, you know. But those guys, everybody's always being compared to you. And when it's time for somebody to call them out or to challenge somebody, your name always comes up first. And I know you don't like that name, the GOAT, but you know you're always being challenged for a reason, son.
There's many reasons why people can say someone is the GOAT. For example, for me, my personal GOAT is Royce Gracie because he has done things that I don't think will ever be done again. You know, time for time, he was the best for me. But of course, if you take Royce Gracie and put him in the octagon right now, I don't think things will go well for him because the sport has evolved. You know, and I believe the athlete of today are better than the athlete of yesterday in general, and the athlete of tomorrow will be even better as the athlete of today. You know, the sport, the performance get better because technology get better. Not necessarily because the guy got better because the knowledge, the technology, it increased the performance. And in terms of GOAT, there's many guys. Like for me, it's Royce Gracie. Who faced the most adversity? I think it's John Jones. Who was the most complete fighter? It was probably Demetrius Johnson. The most flamboyant was Anderson Silva for me. The guy who brought the sport to a next level in terms of pay-per-view and mainstream is Conor McGregor. And of course, then after you have to consider the people who got caught with performance-enhancing drug. Did it affect their legacy, yes or no? And then you start to think, if they got cut once, did this because they use it every fight? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. So we don't know. But there's many reasons why you can say someone who is the GOAT. Amanda Nunes is unbelievable. She's doing things that are incredible. She's cleaning up the division. She's too good. She's a victim of her own success. She's so good. That there is nobody that let us believe that has a chance to beat her.
Well, I'm sure you know that the hardest thing to do is to unconvince the fan when they have it in their mind. And I think that might be something you might be stuck with, my friend. But they're calling you out for a reason. I'm going to give you a little quick rapid fire here real quick, and I got a couple other questions I want to get to. I'm going to give you a couple of names. Jason Miller, Frank Trigg, Sean Shirk, BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, Josh Koscheck, Jake Shields, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz, Johny Hendricks, Michael Bisping, and Dan Hardy. All of those fights you walked through, baby. Tell us your best fight.
I'm very critic about my performance. There's no perfect performance, but I think the fight that I performed the best was perhaps my fight with my second fight with Matt Hughes, my revenge with BJ Penn. Okay. Not revenge, but the second fight with BJ Penn. I like also my finish with Michael Bisping. You know, every fight has a reason why it's special for me.
What was your worst fight?
Oh, of course, my two losses. My loss to Matt Serra, my loss to Matt Hughes. I would say my performance with Jake Shield and Johny Hendricks were not good either. I wish I could have performed better.
What fight didn't you want?
Well, I had to take every fight because when you're a champion, you don't decide. You know, I was always ready to fight whoever comes in front of me.
What fight didn't you get that you might have wanted?
It was a time that we were talking with Anderson Silva for a fight, and it never materialized. But I never had a contract in front of me ready to sign. People were just speculating in the media and everything. And looking back, if we would have done this, it would have been great. But it needed to be done for me. It needed to be done in a catch weight with drug testing. That was my condition, and I don't think UFC wanted it at the time. And at the time, I had so many challenges in my division. I was very busy, like in my division. Like, so I didn't want to go up, gain weight, try to go up, and then come back down. It would have been crazy, maybe a career breaker for me.
Well, now you settled down. You settled in with a family. You've got a family. Tell us what it's like being a dad and having a family today and enjoying that life.
Well, it's fun, you know. As crazy as my career is, you know, my career is beautiful, but my personal life is a million times better than my career. So I think for me as a human being, it's good to have a good career, but to have a good personal life, it's what is the most important thing in the world.
Are there any little ones right now that might anticipate mixed martial arts one day, or
no? A lot of time, there's a parent that comes to me with their kids, and they're always telling me like, George, this is the future world champion. What kind of advice would you tell him? And I will tell him this. I always tell the same advice to the kids, and it shocked the parents sometimes. It kind of, they don't like it, but it's the truth. I tell the kids, I said, listen, kid, stay at school, keep working out, boxing, karate, taekwondo. It's great sport, but stay in school, my friend. And a parent always look at me like this, and I'm like, it's not because I made it that I will tell your kids to choose the same path. There's a chance, maybe one on 10,000 that can make a living. And I'm not talking about only fighting. I'm talking about basketball, hockey, baseball. It's same thing.
What about your own children? What would you tell your own children?
Same thing. I will never force someone to do something.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think martial art is great for self-defense, for training, but I will never force I don't think you should force a kid to do. I think he should decide by himself what he wants to do.
I know
And
that
being educated, be educated. It's more important. I think it's a much easier lifestyle. A lifestyle of an athlete. First, it's the odds of you becoming an athlete and make a living out of it are very low. And even if you like, how many guys, Burt, how many guys try to do it, they finish beaten and broken. Like, we don't talk about it. We only see the one that succeed. 99.9% of the people finish beaten and broken. You know that? I went to the Hall of Fame the other day, like a few years ago, and I saw some of the former boxers and former MMAs. You see them shaking, and like you see them like they have like they're not mentally there. They lost brain cell. Like it's scary. You talk to them, like some of them they're not there. They're not the same person. That some guy that I know are not even the same person than they were when we first started our career. Like, I'm not want to say name for disrespecting, but I'm sure you know.
Understood.
And it's a scary thing. I was lucky I made it, but it's not because I made it I will tell your kids to do it as well. Because I was lucky. I had the chance to meet incredible mentor. The star were aligned. But maybe if, let's say I would have get hit by a car or get a punch on a wrong angle that would squash my brain, maybe I would not have done it the same way. Maybe I would have gone down. So I'm very lucky to have that career. But it's a very hard life. And unless you really want it for yourself, I don't suggest you to choose that path of life.
Well, I can tell you, man, you have given us and have given myself personally, as a friend and as a person that knows you, your legacy is always going to sustain, and it's going to sustain the test of time, and guys are going to keep calling you out. So you better get used to it. But I appreciate you, baby. I appreciate
it's
your
a
time.
compliment for me. I like it. I don't say anything negative, and I like they call me out. It's a sign of respect. But it's not by beating me that they're gonna gain my legacy. It's not because Uriah Hall beat Anderson Silva that automatically is stealing his legacy. It doesn't work like that. It takes time to build up a legacy. You need to fight the same guy sometimes 2 to 3 times. It's a long grind.
Oh, I know they know that, but they also know what they need to do to stay in. I always say to you guys, it's harder to stay here than it is to get here.
Yeah.
George, I want to thank you, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to tell you from the bottom of my heart, man, you'll always be GSP to me. My man, and I appreciate you. And I promise not to kick any more doors in and scare you.
Thank you, Burt. You say hi to your loved one, family, and everybody, and stay healthy, my friend.
I'm dead, baby. Time to go to work. Come on, baby.
We rollin'! Yeah! All night long, baby.